Yiratzon, Parshat Ki Tetzeh, the Limud B'der Fuat, Tanya Batoda Maglit, Yosef Yair ben Aviv Chava, Rav Sivan ben Sima, Reb David Heinach, Reb Yoel ben Fega. The Parsha starts with the words of Ki Tetzeh, which means when you go out. And the Parsha ends with stories of Ki Tavo, when you enter. And you can see that the Parsha begins and ends with an issue of going in and going out. And it starts off with the verb of ki tetzeh, which is to go outward, and it finishes with the verb of ki tavo, that you come back. And the question that the Sfat Emet elaborates on is, why does the Parsha begin with going outward and only then ends with going inward? And to try and understand this question, there's a big tension in a mitzvah called the mezuzah. The mezuzah stands in the entrance to our homes, and it's in between the outside, where we work, where we act, where we do, where we're very active in the world. And then we have the other side, the inside, where it's quieter, where it's just the family. And the mezuzah is sort of in between those two worlds. But what's interesting about the mezuzah is that it's in the outer part of the door. And therefore, it's giving us a certain message, which is that the greatest question for a person is, what's the ability to relate outwards? And what's the right way to relate outwards? We know that all of us will go out. We know that all of us will do. We know that all of us will act. But the question that the mezuzah is asking us is a very direct question, and it's, how can you make sure that when you go out, you're being effective, you're being responsible, you're being in control and not controlled? And the message of the mezuzah is the concept of realizing that the real protection we need is outward. Meaning outside is something that can really pull us to a negative space. The outside could affect us and could control us. And so we put the mezuzah a little bit outward, and we're saying, do you realize that before you go out, you need to know why? Before you go out, you need to know the purpose. Before you go to work, you need to ask yourself your question, what's the reason I'm doing this? Before you learn Torah, you need to ask the question, why am I doing this? Before you walk out and you do all the different things you do, and you go and you give out tzedakah to the world and all these different things, you have to ask yourself the simple question of why. Because there's a mezuzah is teaching us that the best way to go out is to have in. Meaning, if you first have an inside world, when you go outside, you'll be affecting, and you'll never be affected. Our parsha starts with Ki Tetzeh because it's saying that really the first thing you need to realize about outside is that there's a milchama. Ki tetzeh milchama lo ivecha. And the outside is bringing us into a mindset and into a concept that is dealing with a milchama. And what it's saying is that you have to be aware of that before anything else. You have to be aware of ki tetzeh milchama, that when you go out, there will be a war, and you need to know it, and you need to understand it, you need to internalize it. You need to realize that the outside isn't what it looks like. It has struggles and it has tensions that are all positive. Ki tetzeh is not a problem. We want you to go out, but just know that there's a milchama. And the only way to go to a milchama is if you start from inside. The greatest moment of walking, not greatest moment, or I guess most important moment of walking out into combat, before you go out, before you pass the border, with my friends, we would stand together and say Tefillah HaDerech. And the Tefillah HaDerech we would say just before we went out made us realize why we were going out. We were going out because we had a home, because we had where to come from. And I think this might connect a little bit to the shofar. We know that the shofar describes and explains to us how to bring Hashem into our lives. But the shofar, really what it is that it takes your inside and expands it outward. So Baruch Hashem, I get to blow a shofar, and you realize you have to put in everything you have inside, and then it expands. But if there's no inside, then there's no relationship with Hashem, and there's no shofar, and there's no Rosh Hashanah. And so I think my bracha in this parsha is that we start with Ki Tetzeh before Ki Tavo. We need to know that our homes must be aware of Ki Tetzeh. The Torah we learn must be aware of Ki Tetzeh. The actions we do must be aware of Ki Tetzeh, meaning there is an obligation. There is a world that needs to be affected. And therefore it starts with Ki Tetzeh, because then your home will look different. It's not just a place that we sleep in. It's a place that we think. It's a place that we dream. It's a place that we visualize. It's a place that we have vision. And Bezrat Hashem, when we sit with our families this Shabbat, we should all really be able to know that our homes should change because of the outside. Ki Tetzeh Milchama is teaching us that you must first be aware of the atmosphere outside, and therefore make sure that your home is strong enough, real enough, dedicated enough to enjoy the outside and to be there in the right way. Shabbat Shalom.